Michael Hayes always prided himself on being a reliable worker and a devoted husband. After finishing his training as an electrician, he threw himself into his job, quickly becoming one of the most dependable employees at Reynolds Electric. Despite the long hours, he always found time for his wife, Sarah. Their marriage, now 8 years strong, seemed solid, but recently Michael had noticed subtle changes in Sarah's behavior that left him feeling uneasy. Sarah, a sociology professor, was known for her organization and drive. When she got the opportunity to attend some seminars in Lexington, she was eager to go. Michael offered to accompany her, but she insisted on going alone, emphasizing how crucial this was for her professional growth and reminding him of the spring break trip they had planned. Trusting her, Michael agreed, though her firm insistence that he stay behind nagged at him. It was around 6 p.m. on a Wednesday when Michael finally arrived home, exhausted from a long day. He had stayed late to finish a wiring job, wrapping it up sooner than expected, but at the cost of his sore muscles. The quiet house was a stark reminder that Sarah had left earlier that day for her 3-day seminar in Lexington. He had offered to take the day off to join her, but she had urged him to stay, pointing out the cruise tickets displayed on their sideboard, a constant reminder of the upcoming vacation. As he walked in, he noticed there was no message from Sarah confirming her safe arrival, which made him uneasy. He decided to give her a call, and after 2 rings, she answered cheerfully, easing his concern. "I was just about to call you, Michael. You must be reading my mind," she said, sounding happy. He could hear the hum of a crowd in the background, which didn't surprise him. The caller ID would have shown it was him calling. "You know, I always know what you're thinking. So you got there safely? How was the drive?" he joked. She laughed. "It was smooth sailing, thanks to that map you printed out. The traffic was light, and I found the Sheraton without any trouble." "Anything for you, darling," Michael said warmly. "I even thought about asking my boss for some time off to join you." "No, you're not coming here," she quickly interjected, her voice a bit sharp before softening. "We agreed to wait until spring break to go somewhere together." "Just teasing, Sarah. I didn't ask him," Michael responded, though her strong reaction unsettled him. "I'll stay home and behave." "I'm glad to hear that. It's going to be a busy week with the seminars, so we wouldn't have much time together anyway," she said, sounding relieved. "Is there something you needed?" "Yeah, I can't find my travel bag with the sewing kit and lint brush. Could you check the bedroom? If it's not there, maybe it's in the car trunk." "Sure, hang on," Michael said, heading to the bedroom. He found the bag on the dresser and picked up the portable phone. "Found it. It's right here on the dresser." "Thank goodness. I didn't want to have to go down to the garage to look for it. I'll just grab what I need at the hotel store if necessary." She paused. "I've got to go now. I'm third in line at the front desk. I probably won't be able to call much this week. I've got a presentation tomorrow night and a dinner Friday. My last seminar is Saturday morning, so I'll be home by dinner." "That's fine, honey. I'll be busy too. Call if you can, and I'll see you Saturday evening," Michael replied. After exchanging a few more pleasantries, he hung up the phone, but his mind lingered on Sarah's unusual reaction to his joke about joining her. Lately, she had been acting differently, sometimes too quiet, other times overly accommodating. Even when they first discussed him accompanying her on this trip, she had firmly rejected the idea. Pushing these thoughts aside, Michael realized he was hungry and decided to order pizza. With about 40 minutes until the delivery, he headed upstairs to shower and change into some casual jeans and a work t-shirt. Afterward, he relaxed at the kitchen table with a beer, waiting for the pizza. He knew he should probably cook something healthier, but with Sarah out of town, he didn't worry about it, especially since his job kept him in shape. He spent the next hour watching the news, but his thoughts kept drifting back to Sarah and her recent behavior. Something had clearly changed in her over the past few months, and her strong rejection of his offer to join her on this trip was troubling. Sarah, a 35-year-old sociology professor, was a striking beauty with long dark hair and intense brown eyes. She had recently secured a position at the local college and she was proud to be a junior faculty member. At the start of the semester, she had mentioned her teaching assistant, Nathan, a few times, but hadn't talked about him much since. In mid-November, Sarah brought up the seminars she wanted to attend during the break between semesters. Initially, she didn't mind if Michael joined her, but within 2 weeks, she became adamant about going alone, suggesting they plan a trip together for spring break instead. Michael reluctantly agreed to her decision. They didn't discuss the seminars much over Christmas, and they had enjoyed a wonderful holiday with family and friends. Michael had noticed some large envelopes with registration materials that Sarah quickly sent back. She seemed eager for the trip, and had even started packing days before the new year, typical of her organized nature. Around 8 p.m., Michael returned to the bedroom, intending to pick up where he had left off in the book on his nightstand. He decided to put away the bag Sarah had mentioned earlier and noticed it was sitting on top of her journal, a book he thought she usually kept in her briefcase. In their 8 years together, Michael had rarely seen Sarah's personal journal, as she kept it well hidden. Early on, she had made it clear that it was private, and they had never brought it up again. Michael suspected she wrote in it during her free time at work or while he was out. Feeling uneasy, Michael picked up the journal, holding it for the first time. It was a small red leather book with a brass clasp. He wondered if it could shed some light on Sarah's recent behavior. Instead of putting it back, he took it down to the kitchen, where the lighting was better, and examined the clasp more closely. The first thing Michael noticed was that only about 1/3 of the pages in the journal had been filled. It seemed odd to him. Could this really be her only journal? 8 years of entries would certainly fill more than this. He figured she must have other journals hidden away somewhere, likely in her closet. They each had their own closet, and Michael had never had a reason to go into hers. Heading back upstairs, he began searching through her things, and soon found a shoebox on the top shelf containing a stack of identical red leather journals. He brought them back to the kitchen. Each journal had a small white label on the spine, numbered 1 through 6, except for the most recent one, which wasn't numbered at all. The name Lansdale was embossed on the back of each journal, a local boutique that Michael recognized. The clasps on all the journals seemed identical, with no distinguishing features, leading him to wonder if a single key could open them all. Michael quickly searched online for nearby specialty stores and found that Lansdale's was still open. A quick call confirmed they had 2 of the journals in stock, and they'd be open until 10 p.m. Without hesitation, Michael decided to drive over and buy one, hoping the key would unlock Sarah's journals. He knew it was a risky move. Picking the locks could damage them, and Sarah would never forgive him if she found out. But the nagging doubts in his mind pushed him forward. An hour later, Michael was driving home with a new red leather journal, its tiny key safely in his pocket. The journal had been expensive, nearly $60, but he didn't care if it helped him understand what was bothering his wife. If nothing else, he could always give her the new journal as a gift later. Michael was worried Sarah might be hiding something serious, perhaps a health issue, as she had once before when a doctor's visit had alarmed her. She hadn't told him anything until the test results came back clear. Another possibility was that work was stressing her out. Maybe she was having problems with her colleagues and didn't want to burden him with it. But a darker thought loomed in the back of his mind. What if she was seeing someone else? He tried to push the idea away, but it gnawed at him. Michael and Sarah were an unusual pair. He was shorter, with sandy hair and green eyes, while Sarah was tall, slender, with raven hair and striking blue eyes. They had known each other briefly in high school, but reconnected years later at a mutual friend's wedding. They married just a month after she completed her Ph.D. They had started their life together in a small apartment, but had upgraded to a cozy house in the suburbs a few years later, discussing the possibility of starting a family soon. When Michael got home, he wasn't sure if the key he had purchased would fit the clasps on Sarah's journals. He found it tucked inside a small envelope within the journal box. The key was minuscule, and Michael wondered if he should have asked the store clerk whether all the locks were the same. He decided that if the key didn't fit, He would abandon the idea. He wasn't going to waste time trying to find the right one. Within minutes of returning home, Michael was seated at the kitchen table with a stack of journals and a glass of water. Holding the small key, he hesitated as he stared at Sarah's most recent journal. If this key fit, there would be no going back. He hesitated, afraid of betraying her trust, but the unsettling doubts and his concern for her well-being urged him on. The key slid perfectly into the clasp, and as he opened the journal and began to read, his heart sank. His face went pale and tears welled up in his eyes. Michael stood up, walked to the sink, and squeezed the glass of water so tightly that it shattered, spilling water everywhere. Realizing he had cut his hand, he quickly rinsed off the blood and then gathered the journals and key, carrying them to the living room. He placed the books on the coffee table, turned on the lamp, and sank into the couch. He opened the 7th journal to the first page, desperate to understand how everything had spiraled so out of control. The first entry was from early June, more than 6 months ago. As he read through the summer entries, which detailed Sarah's happiness and satisfaction in her life, marriage, and career, Michael found no comfort knowing what was to come. Each word seemed tainted by the bitter truth he had just uncovered. In early September, Michael came across an entry that stopped him in his tracks. Sarah had written about meeting her new research assistant, Nathan Romano, and Michael reread the passage several times, trying to grasp its full meaning. September 8th. Met my new assistant, Nathan Romano, today. He's a bit taller than me, with dark hair, brown eyes, and a rugged beard. He looks like someone straight out of a movie. He left me a copy of his academic record, and he seems very capable. Michael read on, searching for more mentions of Nathan Romano. The next few entries focused on Sarah's classes, with no mention of her new assistant. She seemed content but a bit overwhelmed by the large class she was teaching, which had more than 120 students. September 15th. Nathan is proving to be a great help with the big class, answering students' questions while I prepare my lectures. The female students seem particularly taken with him. Some even said he resembles an actor. Maybe that's why he seems so familiar. As Michael continued reading, mentions of Nathan Romano became more frequent. September 20th. The semester is going well. A few students dropped out, probably found the course too challenging. Nathan has been sitting in the front row during my lectures, watching intently. I should give him more responsibilities. September 24th. Spent a few hours this afternoon working with Nathan on a research project. We made significant progress organizing articles and preparing for a conference presentation. In this entry, Sarah also mentioned wanting to discuss having children with Michael, the first time she had brought up the topic. September 30th. I caught Nathan staring at me again during the lecture. I frowned at him, but he just grinned and kept on watching. After class, a group of female students gathered around him with questions, clearly more interested in him than the material I was teaching. Overall, my students are doing well, but the pressure of being a professor is weighing on me. I'm determined to see them succeed. The next few entries reflected my growing satisfaction with how the semester was progressing. I also felt more confident about discussing the idea of having children with Michael, and we agreed to wait until the end of the school year to start trying. October 8th. I'm thrilled. Michael and I have decided to start a family. I'll be going off the pill after the spring semester. I told Nathan, and he seemed genuinely happy for us. He even hugged me tightly in my office, catching me off guard. I had to gently push him away, reminding him that the door was open. October 10th. Nathan came by my office today, and something felt off. I didn't see him enter until I heard the door close and lock. He smiled and said, "Now no one can see us." I immediately told him to open the door, which he did, but his actions left me uneasy, wondering about his intentions. October 11th. Nathan helped me prepare some quiz questions today. He apologized for locking the door yesterday, and I told him it was fine. When I asked him why he seemed so interested in me, he said he preferred the company of mature women over girls his age. I told him I was happily married, but I have to admit I was flattered by his attention. October 13th. I expected Nathan to stop by today, but he didn't. I was a little disappointed because I wanted to discuss his interest in older women further. October 15th. Nathan came into my office while I was meeting with students. I had hoped he would stay until they left, but he excused himself as soon as I finished with the last group. October 16th. Today I finally had the conversation with Nathan. He asked if he could close the door, and I agreed. When I inquired about his preference for older women, he shared that his first sexual experience had been with a 40-year-old widow, and ever since, he felt that women his age didn't know what they wanted. As we talked, he suddenly hugged me. I let him hold me for nearly a minute before gently pushing him away. Then, without warning, he kissed me and left without saying a word. I know I should have stopped him, reminded him that I'm married, but I didn't, and now I can't stop replaying the moment in my mind. Michael was growing more anxious with every entry. He could see Nathan testing boundaries, and Sarah wasn't responding the way he thought she should. He grabbed a fresh soda, bracing himself to continue reading what appeared to be the unfolding seduction of his wife. October 20th. Late this afternoon, as I was getting ready to leave the office, Nathan appeared and asked if I was busy. When I said no, he locked the door behind him, ignoring my request to open it. He confessed that he had been thinking about me constantly and asked for a birthday kiss. I agreed, thinking it would make him leave. But now I regret it deeply. I apologized for not having a card, and he just laughed, saying his birthday was in July. I should have been furious at his deception, but I wasn't. I'm afraid he's starting to get under my skin, and I need to be more cautious around him. The next few entries didn't mention Nathan at all, as Sarah was preoccupied with grading tests and essays. Michael found it strange that Nathan wasn't helping her with these tasks, but the diary offered no explanation. October 30th. For the first time, I'm at a loss for words about my day. I'm terrified that Michael will see right through me when he gets home. It started when Nathan walked into my office this afternoon. I was engrossed in my reading and didn't notice him until he locked the door. I didn't say anything. He took my hands, lifted me from my chair, and started kissing me before I could react. I'm ashamed to admit that I didn't stop him. He smiled and said, "Don't pretend you didn't enjoy it." I didn't respond, and he simply said, "I knew it." I told him to leave, but he just smiled and said he'd see me tomorrow. I know I'm not handling this well. Maybe I should talk to Michael, but I'm scared he won't understand how I've let this happen. The worst part is, I catch myself thinking about Nathan now and then. Michael read this entry 3 times, his anger growing each time. The thought of Nathan pushing his way into Sarah's life like this made Michael feel like he was about to lose control, if Nathan were in front of him right now. November 2nd. I think I've finally managed to stop worrying that Michael will figure out what happened. That first evening was the hardest. Every time he looked at me, I was sure he could see right through me. When he asked if something was bothering me, I lied, and he believed me without question. I realized then how easy it is to hide things from him. I hope I never have to do this again. November 6th. It's been a few days since I was alone with Nathan. He was at a lecture helping me out, and I noticed he was still watching me. When our eyes met, he smiled, and I'm sure I blushed. For the first time, I'm genuinely worried about how I'll handle it the next time he's alone with me in my office. November 8th. Nathan came into my office today while other students were present. As he left, he blew me a kiss and grinned. I don't think the others noticed, but I wish he would be more discreet. I've received an invitation to some seminars in Lexington after the new year, and I'm seriously considering going. I ordered more information today. November 9th. Yesterday was another tough day. I'm unhappy with both Nathan's behavior and my own, and I'm scared of where this is heading. I had some free time this morning when Nathan slipped into my office without me noticing. October 16th. Nathan ignored my request to open the door and tried to lift me from the chair. I resisted at first, but eventually I gave in. What started as a simple kiss quickly escalated, and I found myself caught up in the moment. Afterward, I fled to the bathroom, filled with guilt and dread, thinking about how furious Michael would be if he ever found out. Nathan followed me, unapologetic, and hinted that he hoped we could do it again. I couldn't bring myself to tell him no. When Michael came home later, I somehow managed to act normal, even though I was still reeling from what had happened. We made love, and it was as passionate as ever, which made me wonder if I was trying to prove something to myself. Michael felt a surge of anger, realizing how deeply things had spiraled out of control. He continued reading, noting that Nathan wasn't mentioned again for the rest of the week. Sarah seemed focused on finishing the semester. November 17th. I don't understand what's happening to me. Nathan has a hold on me that I never anticipated. He came into my office today, and I told him we needed to talk about what happened last time. I made it clear that it was wrong, reminding him that I'm happily married and that my career could be at risk. He just smiled and asked if I wanted to lock the door or if he should do it. I was at a loss for words, and before I could react, he locked the door himself. We've crossed a dangerous line, and I'm conflicted. Part of me knows I should put a stop to this, but another part feels like we haven't done anything truly terrible. I can never tell Michael, but at least no one can see into my office. This happened just an hour ago, and I'm still feeling an unsettling mix of excitement and guilt. I hope I can compose myself before Michael gets home. This entry was particularly difficult for Michael to read. It was clear that things were getting out of control, and he realized he didn't know his wife as well as he had thought. Determined to get to the bottom of everything, he resolved to read all her journals, no matter how long it took. He checked the time, 2 a.m. already, but he couldn't bring himself to stop. Before continuing, he called his office to take the next day off. He knew that nothing would ever be the same. Where there had once been love and plans for the future, there was now a void filled with anger and betrayal. He took a break to use the bathroom and grabbed another soda from the kitchen. Despite the late hour, he didn't feel tired. His mind was racing, trying to process everything he had just read. He checked his watch again, realizing that only 8 hours had passed since his suspicions first began to arise. November 22nd. Nathan came to my office today, but I kept the desk between us. He didn't try to lock the door or make any advances. I've felt so guilty lately that I couldn't let him touch me. I think he sensed my determination to stay on track. I hope I can keep this up. The following entries didn't mention Nathan, as Sarah seemed optimistic with the semester ending in just a couple of weeks. November 23rd. I told Michael about the upcoming workshops in Lexington, and he was supportive, even offering to take time off to join me. I told him I'd think about it. We could find things to do when I'm not attending classes. Apparently, Sarah's decision to attend alone shifted between November 23rd and mid-December, which made Michael uneasy as he read on. November 25th. Nathan stopped me in the hallway this morning, asking if he could visit our house. I firmly told him no, especially when he asked about Michael's late-night work shifts. Then he suggested that I visit him at the place he shares with other students, but I refused. He left his number in case I changed my mind. I mentioned the seminars, and he seemed oddly interested, even though they're intended for faculty. November 30th. Yesterday was a hard day to write about. I feel like I'm losing myself. I barely slept, and Michael noticed something was off. I've been having thoughts about Nathan lately, even though I know I don't have feelings for him. When he came to my office today, we finished prepping for exams quickly, and then he announced he was locking the door. I didn't stop him. Afterward, I ran to the bathroom and cried. How did I let this happen? Nathan was gone when I came out, and everything felt normal again. I spent the rest of the day in tears, trying to make sense of it all. Maybe I should talk to a therapist. Michael could see Sarah's regret in her words, but her inability to stop what was happening only darkened his heart further. He could feel himself changing into someone unrecognizable. December 1st. Nathan stopped by to say goodbye before heading home for the holidays. He asked if I wanted him to come back early to join me at the seminar. I told him I hadn't decided yet. He said he'd call in a few days. December 8th. Today, I told Michael that I preferred to go to the seminar alone, suggesting we take a spring break cruise instead. He wasn't thrilled, but eventually agreed. I feel terrible for lying to him. I haven't decided if I'll invite Nathan, but I'm seriously considering it. I don't love him. I just see him as someone I'm physically attracted to. Spending time together without rushing could be nice since he's experienced. I wonder if he'll call or just drop the idea. December 12th. Nathan called this morning, still keen on going to Lexington with me. He suggested booking 2 adjoining rooms and pretending to be my brother to avoid any suspicion. He even offered to cover the cost of my room. December 14th. Now I have to face the reality of whether I'm going to deliberately betray Michael. Nathan called again today. He tried reaching me yesterday, but I wasn't in the office. Against my better judgment, I went ahead and booked rooms 312 and 314 at the hotel, just as he suggested. The guilt is eating at me, but Nathan seemed thrilled. He's going to cover the cost of room 314 with his credit card. I'm not sure how I feel. Maybe anxious. Maybe curious. Nathan will be leaving after the spring semester, and I won't have to deal with his presence in my life anymore. I hope that after our 3 nights together, this chapter will close for good. I don't know why Nathan has this effect on me. Other attractive men have shown interest before, but I never let it go this far. Nathan just seems to know how to get under my skin. God, I hope Michael never finds out. It would break his heart. The rest of December's entries mention Nathan only once. He called Sarah at home 2 days after Christmas. December 28th. Nathan called me at home yesterday. I was startled to hear his voice, but relieved that Michael was at work. Nathan said he was prepared for the possibility of Michael answering and would have pretended it was a wrong number. He wanted to confirm our plans because he would need to return to town for New Year's to join me. I assured him I was still going, which seemed to excite him. I tried to stay composed, but inside, I felt a growing unease. I'm hoping this trip will be the end of this madness. Before Michael, I never stayed more than 2 nights with the same man. Maybe that's why I agreed to this. I just hope this experience brings some clarity. Michael glanced at the clock. It was almost 5 a.m. He knew the next entry was the one he had read first after opening the journal. He was close to finishing Sarah's last journal, but had already made up his mind to read them all, even though it appeared she hadn't cheated on him before. He needed to be sure, to know if there was anyone else to blame. He took a deep breath and made some coffee before finishing the last few pages. January 3rd. Tomorrow is the day. 3 days of seminars and 3 nights with Nathan. I'll pick him up on the way and drop him off when we return. Thank God Michael didn't insist on coming with me. I wouldn't have known how to handle it. He even found a map online to help me navigate. I checked out the mall near the hotel, and there's a lingerie store there. I might buy something new for Nathan and then wash it before wearing it for Michael. It feels wrong, but he'll never know. I can't believe I'm looking forward to this trip. I wonder if Nathan expects anything different from what Michael and I have done. I'm not sure I'd be comfortable with that, as it could raise Michael's suspicions. Maybe I'll save any new ideas for our spring break, pretending I just felt adventurous. I've started packing, and I hope Michael doesn't notice anything off. After rereading my thoughts, I'm questioning if I can actually go through with this. What happened in my office was impulsive, but this trip is planned. I can't justify it as a moment of weakness. I could still back out, pay for Nathan's room, and cover his travel expenses. Michael finished reading the 7th journal and sipped his coffee, reflecting on the last 9 hours of revelations. He began formulating a plan for the next 3 days. He had already decided his marriage was over, even if Sarah decided not to go through with her plans with Nathan. He knew he could never trust her again. The idea of forgiveness seemed impossible. As the hours passed, his feelings for Sarah grew colder, while his hatred for Nathan intensified. Just before noon, Michael got up from his chair and grabbed the phone. He dialed the number he had found online. "Pearsall Investigations, how can I assist you?" The woman on the other end sounded professional, which reassured Michael. "Do you handle cases related to infidelity?" Michael wasn't sure how to phrase his request, but figured that was the best way to put it. "If you mean gathering evidence for a divorce, then yes. Would you like to speak with a detective?" "Yes, that's exactly what I need," Michael replied, feeling slightly more at ease. After a brief hold with soft music playing, the detective picked up the line. "John Pearsall speaking. You're looking for evidence related to a divorce? How can I assist?" Michael took a deep breath. "I believe my wife is cheating on me with a man at the Hilton near the airport. I need photographic proof, and I want to know the cost." "Understood. Is this happening now? What time frame are we looking at?" "She's there now, staying until Saturday morning. She's in room 312, and the man is in 314. They've been there since last night, but I only made up my mind to act this morning. She's supposed to be attending seminars, but he joined her." John chuckled softly before saying, "I'll need a few more details and we can discuss the type of surveillance you need. Could you provide their names and descriptions?" Michael described Sarah, offered to send a photo, and provided Nathan's name and a basic description based on what he had read in the journal. "It sounds straightforward, Mr. Hayes. We can install cameras in their rooms this afternoon and leave them until they check out. It only takes a few minutes, and I have a contact at the Hilton who allows us access for a set fee per entry." Investigator: "If you're only looking for photographic evidence, the base fee is $800. Michael: "You mentioned cameras. Would it be cheaper if we only used one? All I need is proof that they were together. I'd like to have the photos by tomorrow evening." Investigator: "We need cameras in both rooms since we don't know which one they'll use. The price reflects the quality of our equipment and the cost of hiring a maintenance worker to enter both rooms twice, once to set up and once to retrieve the cameras, which adds an additional $100. Michael: "I hadn't considered that. I've never done anything like this before. Do you need payment up front?" Investigator: "You can handle the payment through our website with a credit card. Use reference number 1N372A when filling out the form to help our accounting department. Once I confirm your payment, I'll arrange the camera installation and prepare a DVD with the footage. I'll need your name and address for our records." Sending a DVD wasn't necessary for Michael at this point, so he asked, "Could you hold on to the DVD until I get back to you? Right now, I just need pictures that confirm they met there. Nothing graphic. Just enough to prove the affair. You can email them to me tomorrow, and I'll handle the rest." Investigator: "Certainly, Mr. Hayes. I can extract stills from the footage and will keep the DVD on file until you decide otherwise." Michael provided his phone number and paid by credit card while on the call. The detective confirmed the payment and assured him that the cameras would be installed immediately. Satisfied, Michael finally allowed himself to rest, drifting off to sleep on the couch. He woke up in the late afternoon, feeling groggy but determined. After grabbing some leftover pizza, he began skimming through Sarah's first journal, reading without dwelling too much on the details. Just as he finished the first volume, Sarah called around 10 p.m. They talked as though everything was normal, both carefully concealing their secrets. After the call, Michael reflected on the situation. Just as he was hiding his actions, Sarah was likely doing the same. He wondered if he could ever regain a sense of normalcy. Before starting the second journal, he reviewed his plans for the following day. He needed to visit the bank and sort out financial matters. He had already quit his job at Reynolds Electric and intended to collect his final paycheck the next day. By 1 a.m., he had finished the second journal, though it had taken longer than expected due to his mind wandering to thoughts of what might be happening at the hotel. Exhausted, he decided to sleep on the couch, avoiding the bed he had once shared with Sarah. Surprisingly, he slept well and woke up around 7 a.m. feeling slightly better. After a quick breakfast, Michael resumed reading, pushing through the third and fourth journals by midday. He then set them aside and focused on his to-do list. First, he went to Reynolds Electric to collect his last paycheck and clear out his belongings. Gus Reynolds tried to convince him to stay, but Michael explained his situation. Gus eventually wished him well, asking him to consider coming back in the future. Next, Michael visited the bank and withdrew over $20,000 from his joint and personal accounts, the maximum he could without needing Sarah's signature. This money would cover his immediate expenses. Returning home around 4 p.m., Michael checked his messages and found a voicemail from Pearsall Investigations. He called back immediately. Investigator. Pearsall Investigations, how can I help? Michael. This is Michael Hayes returning your call, Michael said. Were you able to set up the cameras and get any footage? Investigator. Yes, Mr. Hayes. We installed the cameras yesterday afternoon and captured footage earlier today. Both rooms were empty when we set up, so everything went smoothly. Michael hesitated before asking, did you find anything on the footage? Investigator. Michael, your suspicions were correct. We've gathered all the evidence you'll need for a divorce. They spent the night in your wife's room. I've transferred the footage to a DVD, and it's ready for you to pick up whenever you want. I also have 3 still images from the video ready to email if you still need them. Tears welled up in Michael's eyes, taking him by surprise. Even though he had suspected the truth, seeing it confirmed was devastating. Yes, please email the photos, thank you, Michael managed to reply. Investigator. With your payment confirmed, our job is done, Pearsall stated. Michael. Thank you. The payment is covered, Michael confirmed. Investigator. Are you sure you're okay? You sound different from when we spoke yesterday. These situations can be emotionally challenging, and I'm concerned, Pearsall expressed. Michael, trying to maintain his composure but with a noticeable edge in his voice, replied, I'm fine, thanks. I'll reach out if I need anything else. Investigator, if you decide to pursue a divorce, your lawyer might need a copy of the DVD. We'll keep it on file for a year or until you instruct us otherwise. Therapy can be helpful in situations like this. A good therapist can support you through the emotional strain, Pearsall advised. Michael. Don't worry about me, Mr. Pearsall. I know what I need to do. Thanks for your help, Michael said before abruptly hanging up, not giving Pearsall a chance to say more. His expression remained unreadable as he sat in the kitchen, the weight of his decisions pressing down on him. When his computer chimed with a new email, he quietly walked over and opened it. The email from Pearsall Investigations contained the photos he had requested. He printed the 3 attached images on 8x10 paper, and within minutes, he held the proof of Sarah's infidelity in his hands. The photos weren't graphic, but they were damning enough. After one last look, he slipped them into a brown envelope and left it on the kitchen table. Returning to the chair where he had spent most of the last 2 days, Michael picked up Sarah's 5th journal. By midnight, he had read through the last 2 volumes. Reflecting on all 6 journals, he realized that Sarah had mostly lived up to his expectations. There were few surprises, and nothing suggested she had ever contemplated cheating on him before. He discovered small secrets that clarified past misunderstandings, noticing her deep insecurities and lack of self-confidence. But what stood out the most was her obvious love for him, making her affair with Nathan even more incomprehensible. The biggest surprise for Michael was learning that their meeting at the birthday party years ago hadn't been a coincidence. When Sarah found out that the birthday boy knew Michael, she had insisted on inviting him. The rest was history. The journals kept Michael so engrossed that he didn't even notice that Sarah hadn't called. As he made himself a sandwich and drank a glass of water, his mind kept drifting back to Sarah and Nathan. The dark thoughts only strengthened his resolve to carry out his plans. After finishing his late meal, Michael tried to sleep, but images of Sarah and Nathan haunted him every time he closed his eyes. Around 7 a.m., he gave up on sleep and decided to get started on the day he had been preparing for. He had a lot to do and wanted to start early, at 8:30 a.m. He called his brother Samuel, his only close relative. Although they weren't estranged, they rarely saw each other outside of holidays. Samuel was surprised by Michael's plan to visit that morning, but fortunately, he had no other commitments. Michael kept himself busy until he arrived at Samuel's house a little after 10 a.m. Knowing the kids would be eager to get back to their activities, Michael gathered them in the kitchen, where he sat with Samuel while Mary made coffee. Aware that they were planning a Disneyland trip for spring break, Michael handed each child a $100 bill for spending money. The children were thrilled and gave him big hugs of gratitude. "You didn't have to do that, Michael," Samuel said with a smile, "but you sure made their day. What's going on? Did you hit the jackpot or something?" Michael forced a small smile. "No, nothing like that. I just wanted to do something nice." They chatted over coffee until Mary brought up Michael and Sarah's plans to have children, mentioning how much they would enjoy having kids around. Michael paused before responding, "Yeah, she did mention that. Women sure like to share everything." Before Mary could say more, Michael added, "But who knows? Things change, and plans don't always work out the way we expect." He then shifted the conversation, asking his brother about his work managing the restaurant. A few minutes later, Michael stood up to leave. "If I don't see you until next Christmas, take care of yourselves," he said, shaking his brother's hand and giving Mary a brief hug. "I'll be thinking of you," he added before turning and heading to his car. As he drove away, Samuel turned to Mary. "I wonder what that was about. He seemed like he had something on his mind but didn't want to talk about it." Mary shrugged. "Michael's probably just passing the time until Sarah gets back from that seminar. I remember her saying she'd be gone until this evening." They walked back into the house, hand in hand, discussing their plans for the day. Just before 6 p.m., Sarah arrived home, surprised to see that Michael's car wasn't there. Entering the kitchen, she was puzzled by the quiet, as she had expected him to be home. Although a bit disappointed, she realized the empty house would give her time to unpack and do some laundry. She also planned to take another shower, just to be sure all traces of Nathan were gone. As she walked past the kitchen table, she noticed a note pinned down by a salt shaker. It was from Michael. "Sarah, Gus called early this morning needing help at the project site. I agreed to fill in as the lead foreman. I'll be back tomorrow afternoon. Michael." Irritated by the note, but relieved to have some time to herself, Sarah placed it on the counter and took her suitcase upstairs to start the laundry. Deciding on a long, hot bath instead of a shower, she began sorting her clothes. As she carried the laundry basket toward the bedroom door, she noticed her journal sitting on top of the tall dresser. She remembered leaving it there with her overnight bag on Wednesday and was relieved to see it hadn't been touched. She had planned to update it during the trip but had forgotten. While the laundry was running, Sarah decided to catch up on her journaling before taking her bath. As the washing machine hummed in the background, Sarah made herself a sandwich and some soup. After eating, she placed the dishes in the sink and tried to call Michael using speed dial. Hearing his phone ring from a basket on the counter, she realized Michael had left his cell phone at home. "Great. How am I supposed to reach you now?" she muttered, annoyed. She returned to the kitchen table, retrieved the small brass key from her wallet, unlocked her journal, and began writing. January 7th. Dear Diary, the most intense 4 days of my life are over, and I need to put it all down on paper. Some of it won't be easy to write, but I have to do it. January 7th. When I picked up Nathan, it was obvious he was eager for the trip. He kept trying to touch me during the drive, which annoyed me until we got on the highway. As we drove further, I started to relax and found myself enjoying his attention. Once we arrived in the city, we made a stop at the mall before heading to the Hilton. While he went to the pharmacy, I headed to Victoria's Secret. He joined me before I finished shopping and made a few suggestions. I bought one set he liked and 2 others that I chose. The set he picked was gaudy, and after wearing it Wednesday night, I tossed it in the trash before we checked out. I also threw away 2 other lingerie sets because I didn't want anything to remind me of our nights at the Hilton. I know I can't erase all the memories, but I'll try. Sarah continued writing in her diary, her emotions churning as she recounted the past few days. She wrote about how her feelings for Nathan had shifted and how she began thinking more about Michael. She realized the stark difference between lust and love, especially after that first night. By Friday morning, she had told Nathan through the locked bathroom door not to come to her room again. She was relieved to see him with another woman later that day, knowing she wouldn't have to deal with him that night. She also started planning how to make things right with Michael. After finishing her entry, Sarah placed her pen inside the diary as a bookmark, left the diary on the table, and went upstairs to prepare a bath. She brought a cordless phone with her in case Michael called. Once the bath was ready, she added some bath oil, lit a few candles, and settled into the warm water. She almost drifted off to sleep, but suddenly felt an uneasy sensation, as if someone were watching her. She opened her eyes and looked toward the bedroom, but no one was there. Shaking off the feeling, she tried to relax, focusing on how to repair the damage she had done. An hour later, feeling somewhat rejuvenated, Sarah returned to the kitchen, transferred the laundry to the dryer, and sat down to reread her diary entry. She was momentarily confused when she couldn't find her pen, but then noticed it on the counter near a wicker basket. Retrieving the pen, she opened the diary and began reading. On Sunday morning, Sarah woke up determined to make a fresh start. She cleaned the house, showered, and dressed in an outfit she knew Michael liked. By noon, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, a roast beef cooking in the oven. Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. To her surprise, two large men stood there, one a young uniformed officer with his hand resting on his holstered gun, the other an older man in a suit, holding out a police ID. "I'm Detective Rankin, and this is Officer Reynolds. We're from the Springfield Police Department. We're looking for Michael Hayes. Is he home?" Relieved, Sarah quickly replied, "Michael's at work. I was worried something had happened when I saw you. I'm his wife. Maybe I can help." The men exchanged glances before the detective said, "Maybe we should come in. It's a bit chilly out here." "Of course, come in," Sarah said, leading them into the kitchen. "Why are you looking for Michael? He's never been in trouble." The detective replied, "We received a report of a homicide early this morning. The call was traced to your husband's phone. We're working with his carrier to pinpoint the location where the call was made." Relief washed over Sarah's face. "There must be a mistake. I tried calling Michael last night and found his phone here at home in that basket." She pointed to the wicker basket on the counter. The detective, skeptical, asked, "May I check the phone?" He walked to the basket, looked through it, and then returned to the table. "I don't see a phone here, Mrs. Hayes. Are you sure you're not confusing this with another day?" Sarah's expression turned to shock as she realized the basket was indeed empty. She quickly moved to the basket's location and searched around, though it was clear there was nothing else on the counter. "I don't understand. His phone was right here when I tried to call him last night," she stammered, clearly distressed. The detective frowned. "Well, I can't explain why the phone isn't where you said it was, but I have to believe the call traced to your husband's phone was indeed made from that device." He opened his briefcase, jotted down a few notes, then continued, "Does your husband know a Mr. Nathan Romano?" At the mention of the name, Sarah's face went pale. "I know Nathan Romano, but my husband doesn't. Nathan was my teaching assistant last semester." The men exchanged looks before the detective asked, "So there's no reason your husband would have a problem with Mr. Romano? Are you sure Michael never met him?" Panicked, Sarah responded, "No, Michael never met Nathan." The detective made a few more notes before looking directly at her. "Well, your husband seemed to know Mr. Romano well enough to report his murder." Sarah was so stunned by the statement that she collapsed into the nearest chair. "Nathan is dead? He was with me on a trip. I dropped him off at his house around 5:30 last night." "How could he be dead?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. Detective Rankin sat across from her at the kitchen table, his expression serious. "What was your relationship with Mr. Romano? Could there have been anything that gave your husband a reason to take action?" Sarah's face drained of color as she replied, "Nathan was just an older student, my teaching assistant. There was no reason for Michael to do anything to him." Despite her words, her tone was shaky and unconvincing. The detective let the silence hang in the air for nearly 30 seconds, watching as Sarah squirmed under his gaze. Then he continued. When we arrived at the address your husband provided, we found evidence that Mr. Romano had been attacked in the entryway of his home. There were signs of a struggle, and a travel bag was found in the hallway. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as the detective described the scene at Nathan's house. The estimated time of death was between 6 o'clock and 8 p.m. yesterday. Sarah interrupted, her voice cracking. Michael would never do that. He's not capable of hurting anyone. Her tears had mostly subsided, but her expression was now more angry than upset. The detective glanced at his notes before continuing. According to state records, your husband is licensed to carry a .25 caliber semi-automatic pistol. One of the bullets that struck Mr. Romano was recovered from the chair he was tied to. Our preliminary analysis suggests it was fired from a .25 caliber weapon. He paused for a moment, then added, "There's also the question of motive." Detective Rankin pulled 3 photocopies from his briefcase and placed them on the table in front of Sarah. These are copies of photographs found at the crime scene. Their location next to Mr. Romano suggests he was shown these before he died. I believe you haven't been completely honest with me about your relationship with Nathan Romano or your husband's interest in him. Sarah picked up the photocopies with trembling hands and stared at them in shock. The realization of what she was looking at hit her like a punch to the gut, and she began to sob uncontrollably. No, Michael couldn't have known. The detective was about to continue when his phone rang. He answered it quickly, speaking little and mostly taking notes. Sarah sat quietly, crying into her hands as the detective finished his call. When he was done, Detective Rankin looked at her intently. Your husband's phone was traced to Windsor, Ontario. The local police found his phone, along with his credit cards and a .25 caliber pistol registered to him in a trash bin in a Walmart parking lot. There was no sign of him or his car, but his car's license plates were also found in the trash. It's possible he switched the plates to blend in with Ontario traffic. This news did nothing to comfort Sarah, who continued to weep, her despair deepening. After a few minutes of watching her, the detective pulled another photocopy from his briefcase and placed it in front of her. It was an image of a small brass key next to a ruler. This key was found at the scene. We don't know what it unlocks. Do you recognize it? Sarah glanced at the photo, then quickly grabbed her wallet. After a few frantic seconds, she pulled out the key to her diary and held it next to the photo. Seeing that they were identical, she completely lost her composure, sinking into the chair. The only words she could manage were, "Diary, Michael." The 2 men stayed with Sarah for nearly 15 minutes, waiting for her to calm down. They managed to convince her to call someone to come and be with her. When her sister confirmed she'd be there soon, the detectives finally left. As Officer Reynolds walked to their car, he asked, "Do you think we'll catch him soon?" Detective Rankin replied, "It depends on how well he can hide in the next few weeks. He hasn't committed any crimes in Canada, so I'm not sure how aggressively the local police will search for him. It's not like he's a serial killer. If he keeps a low profile, the longer he's out there, the less likely he is to be caught. If he's still at large in 6 months, we may need to request TV coverage. Those most wanted shows can be pretty effective." Reynolds thought about this for a moment before asking, "What do you make of her story about the phone?" She seemed genuinely shocked that it wasn't there. "Yeah, I don't think she was lying or confused," Rankin agreed. "I suspect he came home last night, but for some reason didn't follow through with whatever he planned. He probably saw the phone and decided to take it with him." Reynolds looked puzzled. "But if he was home, why didn't he let her know? It seems odd that he would just come back for the phone." Rankin stopped and looked at the younger officer. "Think about it, Reynolds. Michael Hayes had just killed her lover and was likely planning to kill her too, maybe even himself. Something changed his mind, but I don't believe for a second that he just went back for the phone." Reynolds nodded slowly, considering the detective's words. "I imagine Mrs. Hayes will eventually realize how close she came to losing her life, and wonder why it didn't happen. I wonder how she'll cope with that.